In this series of video, I'm going to demonstrate how to build an ASP.NET Core MVC app with the create, read, update and delete capabilities. We will also learn how to enable basic authentication and authorization. Down below in the description, I will leave references to important links that might be helpful to you from a reference perspective. So let's get started. Let's have a glimpse of what we will be building today. So this application has few functionalities enabled. By default, we see that we have a home page, a privacy page, and then we have built our own views that contains the list of product names and the category names as well. We also have the ability here to create a new product. We have the ability to update as well as delete, and we have also implemented a search functionality. And let's see, let's try to search something in the list. To get all items will clear the list and display all the items. As you can see, we also have the authentication enabled. So we click on the logout. This is going to log us out. Clicking on the product list. So the product list is now secured. We need to ensure that we log in. On the successful login, we can see that the product list again displays list of all the products. So this is what we are going to build in today's session. In order to work with the application, we will require some tools. In our case, I'm using the SQL Server Express Edition. I have the SQL Server Management Studio already installed. We will also be using the Visual Studio 2022 Community Edition. So both are free versions and they can be downloaded from the Microsoft site. So the very first thing before creating the application, we need to create a database. So let's start creating one. So I'm going to create a database and let's name it as CRUD. Click on OK. We can see that a new database has been added, and so far we don't have any user tables in this. We will have the user tables created automatically through the scaffolding. So let's look at the concept of it. So let's create a new project. We will select the ASPNET Core web app, which has the model view controller. Click on the next. Let us name our project as Auto Project CRUD, and let us leave the location as is. Now let us select the authentication type as individual accounts. This will ensure that scaffolding takes place and the necessary identity objects are added to the project. Let's explore some of the files in the project. We have the app settings.json. This is our configuration file, and we can see that we have the default connection already being established. we will have to replace the name of the server and the database with the one that we have created. Let's look at the views folder. In the views, we have the shared folder. In the share, we have the login partial. So this file has been again added via the identity scaffolding. And we can see that we have the sign in as well as the user manager objects, which have already been injected. Right. And as a result of that, we are able to request the name of the logged in user. We have the register and the login page already created for us as part of the scaffolding. Going a little up, so in the data we have the application DB context. This is our interface with the database. So we will be soon configuring this particular class to populate various different DB sets. We will see that in a while. And then we have the migrations folder. Now if we look at the migration schema, we can see that a class has already been populated with various different entities that will allow us to create tables in the database. So this has already been provided to us as part of the scaffolding. Now let's look at the program.cs file. In the program.cs file, we see that we are getting the connection, which is the default connection defined in the app settings.json file. We are retrieving that and storing it into the connection string, and that connection string is being used or leveraged to add our application DB context. So this service is currently being registered in the container, and this service will then be leveraged via the dependency injection in the application DB context through the constructor. Let us configure the database connection into our app settings file. So let's navigate to our SQL Server Express. Click on the properties and copy the name of the server. And our database is named as CRUD. So we will configure this in the server. We will also add the database name. Let's also look at the NuGet packages. Those have been added as a part of this project. So as you can see that as a part of the project, we have the ASP.NET Core, Diagnostics Entity Framework Core. We have the Identity Framework as well. And we have the Entity Framework Core for SQL Server, as well as the tools that we require in order to work through the console. We will also need one more package to ensure that we are able to generate the views and the controllers using the scaffolding. So let's select the code generation.design, and I'll be selecting a version which is closer to the other NuGet packages. Click on the install. Click on OK. Accept. And at this point in time, we should have the packages installed, necessary libraries. So let's compile this application. And see if this application runs. So let's click on and run the application. And we can see that our application is up and running. So we have the basic framework available in our application with the login and the register buttons. Let's click on the login. So as you can see that we can see the login page. Now this is what the scaffolding has created for us. Similar to that, we have the registration. So we register a user and then we use the login page to authenticate. At this point in time, we still do not have the necessary code to enable the authentication. So this is something that we will be doing at the end of our session, or nearing it to our end of our session. So we have our home and the privacy page already built. Now we are going to go ahead and create a view that's going to help us list all the products in our database. So let's do that. Or we can also add the identity objects or create them in the database using the migration. So let's do that. Okay. Let's open the package manager console. Let's first close a few windows over here. And fire up some commands to get this schema migrated to our database. In order to migrate them, use the update database command. Before we fire this, we just want to ensure once that we have the server name and the database correct, which we feel yes, it's correct. So let's go back to the package manager console and update the database. Great, so we can see that the migration has been completed. Now let's look at our database and see what are the new entities created in the database. Okay, so let us refresh. And see if we can see any new tables created, and yes, we can see them. We can see that the identity scaffolding has created 7 different tables in our database. So let's have a look at the table. Okay, So let's fire a query on the roles. Would also need the users table and the net user roles table. We already have that, so let's have the ASP.NET roles. We do have that as well. So let's look at the user roles. Okay, so let's look at this table. Which has the users. We can see that it has created various different columns that we will be leveraging in order to register a user. Then we have the roles. Now this table will be leveraged for creating new user roles for this particular project. And then we have the user roles, which will map the users to the roles table. So let's have a look at it. Okay. So now we have the basic structure created to hold the identity information in the database. Now let's create the domain models that will be representing our database objects or tables holding the product and the categories information. Now we will be following the code first approach. So we will be creating the domain models and then we will fire up our migration in order to create a migration file, and then using the update database we will be creating the models in the database. So let's see how to accomplish this task.